President Donald Trump is considering removing the security clearances for several Obama-era officials. So far, 6 people are on the short list of Trump's obvious decision. And yes, I believe he needs to make it. The list starts with John Brennan, a former CIA director who can't shut his mouth in the last couple weeks. The other names are James Clapper, James Comey, obviously, and several others who might be considered politicizing or monetizing their interests for public service. This is sure to fire up the Democrats, obviously, who support the following names, particularly those who go against President Trump and everything he fights for. Some Democrats just can't be pleased. Well, it's an agenda anyway, ladies and gentlemen, and the last time I checked, John Brennan isn't the CIA director anymore, James Clapper isn't in the government anymore, and neither is James Comey because he was fired. Get rid of these people. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders stated that President Trump is exploring whether to remove the security clearance of former, yes, I said former, CIA Director John Brennan and other top Obama-era intelligence officials. They're former employees, ladies and gentlemen. They shouldn't even have security clearance anymore. They're lucky they get a pension. According to Sarah Sanders, they've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances. That means they're making money off of CNN interviews on MSNBC, those type of things, making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president and is extremely inappropriate. And the fact that the people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, they're just talking. And yes, when we're watching them on the mainstream media, they're being paid for their opinions because it's based on no facts whatsoever. Sanders' comments came after Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, suggested on Twitter that Brennan should have his security clearance revoked. Obviously, President Trump has sparked bipartisan criticism when he cast doubt on the intelligence community's assessment of Russian election interference, a remark he later walked back on, obviously. Last week, Brennan described Trump's remarks alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin following their meeting in Helsinki as nothing short of treasonous and suggested that he exceeded the threshold of impeachment, high crimes, and misdemeanors. Sarah Sanders also stated that she refuted the suggestion that President Trump is himself politicizing matters of national security by going after his political enemies. When you have the highest level of security clearance, when you're the person who holds the nation's deepest, most sacred secrets at your hands, and you go out and make false accusations against the President of the United States, he thinks that that is something to be very concerned with, and we're exploring what those options are, and we're exploring what those options might be. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, it's just the same old story. It doesn't matter what President Trump does. Every day, every week, certain people are enemies of President Trump, and they're going to go against him no matter what he does. No matter how he does it, he is not politically correct to them because he isn't a politician. He's a man for the people of the United States of America.
He basically wrote this entire memo to mislead the American public without ever having read this FISA application.
They were lying when they said that that the FISA judges were fooled because they were not told that part of the base of the application.
Devin Nunes acting as a useful idiot for the Russian government.
Your reaction to some of that?
I enjoy it. Just bring it on. The more that they do, the more that they attack, the more that we know we're right over the target. They cannot deny. What was the major point of the memo was to say that the dossier was used in this application, and it made up the bulk of the FISA. Even with the redactions, you can see that that's the case.
But I want to ask you about that particular part. Let's quote from a FISA expert, David Criss, on the Warren application on the website Lawfare. This is what he said. Now, we can see that the footnote disclosing Steele's possible bias takes up more than a full page in the applications. There's literally no way the FISA court could have missed it. The FBI gave the court enough information to evaluate Steele's credibility, and that basic point's being repeated quite often
by the left. So one of the things you have to realize now with all the press is the press, certain members of the press work for the Democratic Party, and the Lawfare blog has been one of them. I mean, they've been, every day there's some new attack out, and so I don't put a lot of credibility into what they say. The fact of the matter is that you have to present verified information to the court. And let's not forget, to open up a counterintelligence investigation to a campaign, unprecedented, but then to use these invasive types of capabilities on an American citizen that should be very, very seldom used. In this case, not only did they use it, but they used it with information from the other candidate's campaign, and it wasn't verified.
Well, what they said about Steele, what they put in the application is that there was reason to trust him. They don't refer to him by name.
Yeah.
Source number one. So they said, well, there's reason that he's credible because other information source number one had given us had led to criminal convictions. Is that not good enough for you?
That is not.
Why?
Well, it's absolutely not the case. I mean, if we're going to go to secret courts, and first of all, I believe it doesn't even follow the rules and regulations. Just because a source was good in one case doesn't mean that the next time they're going to bring information forward that it's not going to be, that it doesn't have to be verified. This is a secret court. That information must be vetted and verified.
But they didn't name a number of other people, and we have a full page of the application that we'll put up on the screen, but there were a lot of people who weren't named. So there were candidate number one, candidate number two, source number one, source number two, and you can see it in the actual in the actual application.
And that's why they really had to use like word puzzles to get to how they described in that footnote where they supposedly told the court that it was paid for by the Democrats and that it was possibly, they speculate it could be partisan.
Well, they didn't say that specifically. They said in opposition to the president, correct?
That's correct.
Right. But
they could have easily said that it was paid for by candidate number two.
And they did not say that. Why?
I believe because that's crazy. I mean, can you imagine, do we live in a country today, well, I guess we do actually live in a country because this actually did happen, but where we can just go hire, private, former contractors to go out and in this case, a British, former British agent to go dig up dirt on your opponent, take it to the FBI and DOJ that you control, feed it into them so that they can open up a counterintelligence investigation without any defense there, without any grand jury, and go and get all of your communications. And look, that's why they wanted to have Carter Page. That's why they wanted all of his electronic communications. Like, I keep hearing this argument, well, it wasn't until after he was off the campaign. In the FISA application itself, it says that they believe he's the guy that's running this collusion effort.
Yeah.
So clearly they think he's still involved in the campaign, and clearly this guy had his rights abused.
Well, Marco Rubio actually made that point. Let's watch.
I don't think they did anything wrong. I think they went to the court. They got the judges to approve it. They laid out all the information, and there was a lot of reasons unrelated to the dossier for why they wanted to look at Carter Page. And Carter Page was not a key member of the Trump campaign, and the Trump campaign has said that.
So it was one element, but he said the FBI didn't do anything wrong. Russia did something wrong.
Well, we're all entitled to our own opinions, and I'm a big fan of the senator. But in this case, we have followed this very closely. And you're suggesting he hasn't? Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that
he's pretty definitive. He said they didn't do anything wrong.
It's clear that if this is the way the FISA courts are going to behave, if this is that you can take political dirt, open up investigations into political campaigns, this is how a democratic republic falls apart. It's just unacceptable.
It's not an overstatement.
Nobody in their right mind, and if the shoe was on the other foot, right down the street here, you would have protests in the street, cars being blocked, fires in the street, tires being burnt, and I guarantee you all the heads would have rolled already at FBI and DOJ, and you'd have all the major newspaper, all the major media saying what a crime this was that this happened.
Was that footnote a CYA footnote for the so they can say, look, we referenced this. This was someone who didn't like candidate number one. We referenced it because they did go out of the way to put that in the footnote.
Yeah,
that is very interesting.
And that's why it's so. That's why I think you make a very good point. And this is what I was trying to say earlier. You have to really desperately try to put the words together the way that they did, instead of just having a simple definition, which could have been candidate two hired Fusion GPS, right, or U.S. person 1 to hire source 1 to go get the information. That was really simple to explain. The courts would have understood it easily, and I think the courts would have, at that point, well, they should have rejected it. I'm not sure they would have, but they should have.